understand what people are thinking in terms of change, and we need to come up with mechanisms that allow us to identify areas of concerns in a very proactive way. So we're going to talk a little bit more about some tools that can be used in terms of understanding that impact. But ultimately, you want to work on ways that you can pulse early and often for what people are thinking. You want to do it through both a series of formal and informal channels. So whether you do town hall meetings or just maybe email requests or formal surveys or those types of things, it's just really important that you keep those mechanisms in place that are kind of identifying where these challenges are. And we would also recommend that you kind of do a balance of utilizing technology to give you scale, but to make sure that you do have a personal touch, because a personal touch will do a significantly better job of managing or getting out the true challenges and concerns from individuals typically. So again, change breaks that organizational structure, causes disorganization, causes confusion and frustration, creates negative emotions. Intercepting that all is what we want to do before that cycle continues to feed. And ultimately, we need to be able to say that we need to embrace change. You're not going to change the fact that change does this, but you can embrace the fact that it's going to happen, and we're going to deal with it. So if we kind of think of all the people that are affected by a technology project, you typically see that the Pareto principle applies, which are kind of get the 80-20 rule. You typically have 10% of those that are affected that are going to be kind of in the champions category, and really kind of typically these are guys people that are on your team or closely related, or whose idea it was, or there's a lot of things that put you in the champion column. You have about 10% of people we would classify as helpers, and by helpers we mean they're on board to do whatever it takes to help you kind of move the change through the organization. And we have this big group of people, 60% of the people, that are bystanders. In other words, they are kind of adopting the, well, let's see how this goes attitude, and we'll decide, kind of if this is a good or a bad thing ultimately. And then typically you have about 20% of the organizations that are your resistors or disruptors, or people that, whether they're doing it consciously or subconsciously, are literally kind of throwing those barriers, throwing those concerns, working up those negative emotions within the organization. So what we'd like you to do is we'd like to understand kind of where you think we should spend the most of our time, and where should we look for a strategy. Should we spend most of our time dealing with the resistors, the bystanders, the helpers, or the champions? So if you wouldn't mind, just tell us kind of who you think, and again, we're just going to do kind of some informal tallying here of where you think we should spend the bulk of our time.
And while you all are typing this in, if there, again, we are tweeting throughout here, so if there are comments, or if you have a Twitter account and you'd like us to kind of reference you, just put your handle in the in your question or comment, and we'll be sure to put that out there as well.
Yeah, so as we see the results coming in, I would say the lion's share of you are stating that we should be dealing with the champions. I would say, Justin, if you agree with me, probably about 80%, maybe 75% are saying champions.
Actually, I've seen a lot of bystanders too. Actually,
a big run in bystanders.
Yeah, we got a huge run in bystanders right now. As soon as you said that, okay. So, Dave, I'd say it's about 50-50.
Yeah, and actually, really, the champions are on board. And again, not that we're going to ignore the champions, but ultimately, the easiest place we can go to get support with our initiative is to really kind of get these bystanders, to get them off the sidelines and get them involved. Often, a lot of attention is paid to the resistors. In other words, you'll have a couple of people or a small group or a couple of groups that are really kind of putting blocker after blocker in place, and ultimately I think you can find such much better and rewarding use of your time to work through these bystanders and get them on board, because the resistors will just wear you out, and they will tend to just be kind of a time vacuum of effort and resources, and ultimately to even get them into the bystander mode is a lot more work than kind of getting a chunk of the bystanders into the helper or champion category. So we're going to ask is just another poll here. So what are some strategies you think you could use to engage some of the end users early on that would be in that bystander category? And some of you actually put some of these ideas actually in the last question as well. But if you could kind of give some thoughts of what do you think are some ways we can get people off the sidelines from that bystander category and more into the champion or helper category?
This is a good one, Dave. Ignore the cynics and try to win over the skeptics.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Ken.
This is a good one. Paul had a good one up. Free food. That always helps.
No, we have Dan. Organizational change takes 200 days. For the first 100 days, nothing happens. For the next 100 days, everyone complains. I would deal with the helpers. The champions are on board. Okay, so I don't know that I could say that I'm familiar with the 200-day statistic, but I agree with proportionally. You do have a period of time where, again, it's new, it's different. There's a lot of complaining going on.